I can't, I'm not as loud as you are, Dave. So. Well, so this time I'm going to call the Board of Finance public hearing to order. On behalf of the Board of Finance, I do welcome all of you. I'm so pleased with many people. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ginger Betty. I'm the current Board of Finance Chair, and I am joined by the other Steve Dean, Amy Wynn, Carl Munson, John Steines, and Carol Staff is on Zoom. So we do have a few people on Zoom. This hearing, as many of you know, is an opportunity for you as the town of Canaan townspeople to receive the presentations from that are proposed spending from the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen. The presentations will be made by Pat McCare and First Selectman Dave Barter. Before we begin, I have to say that we have worked very hard to get to the point where we are. We did ask the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance to make a Board of Selectmen to make some cuts to their municipal spending, and we did get to a 10,000 and a 50,000 cut there to bring the spending plan to where it is presented that you all have a copy of. Pat will go through her side of both the Kellogg and the regional spending. And we did see some increases there, and I know she will explain through those. And Dave, we're at about a 4% right now increase across from prior fiscal year. And that includes our debt service. I will have Dave walk through the various lines with you. If you have questions, this is your opportunity to speak up and allow the Board of Finance to listen. And, we will take questions and we'll do our best. But right now, we're here to be ears for what all of you have. I know it's passionate. Everybody has their passionate points, and I think we all should take the time to listen to each other. I ask for, I've invited Lou Timlot has agreed to be our moderator this evening. And we're going to please one person at a time. We have the ability for Zoom, and we do have Zoom participants, so we would like to be able to speak up. If you would, please stand, recognize yourself, and let everybody on the Zoom know, as well as us, who's commenting and joining us this evening. We're looking right now, if you haven't noticed, we're about our proposed spending plan in total over last budget is about a 5.94% increase with both the Board of Ed and the Board of Select. We do have to take one thing, and we have to seat alternates because I do not have one member, Tom Wilson. So I will entertain a motion to seat Carl.
Second.
Is that you, Steve? Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Joining us this evening. Lou? I'll let you take that.
Good evening, everybody. The role of a moderator in a public hearing is a role, and the role of a moderator in a town meeting, which is a public agency in session as a body with the power to act. This is a hearing. In a town meeting, the moderator is the presiding officer, and that's not the case here. I'm more of an aide to help guide the proceedings so that it moves along and that it is kept in order, but not steer the proceeding. No question should come to me about a financial matter, since I'm strictly neutral and I'm just kind of dealing with the traffic. With regard to the question that was raised, should there be a time limit? It seems to me that we've not had the problem with anyone taking too much time in the past, plus which if the question has been clearly asked and answered, I may, as moderator, say that we should move on. There could be an exception. A question that has been asked and answered might raise a considerate question. And I intend to be flexible, although I may be overruled by the chairman of the board. The one other thing I wanted to mention, that in this hearing, with regard to your questions and concerns about matters to be spent, the citizens in session have the right to reduce amounts that are in a spending plan, so that the Board of Finance does not have the final say with regard to how little can be spent out of any line. But they do have the say as to how much can be spent, since no amount may be spent more than is recommended by a Board of Finance as provided for by statute in towns that are governed by town meetings and board selection. Are there any questions with anything I've said? Then the floor is open to direct questions through Chairman Betty. Sir, could you stand?
Ken L. Chair. I do not have a copy of the Board of Education.
For the. Yep.
Thanks. I got one. Thank you very much.
Chairman Betty, having made preliminary remarks of the draft for an appropriations, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education have brief overviews of their submittals to the Board of Finance. I'll recognize Mrs. McCara first to give a brief overview on the thoughts, or rather the planned resources for the Board of Education.
Okay. Louis said something about the high school Board of Education. I just want to remind people that there was a referendum on the high school Board of Education, and it passed overwhelmingly in all our towns. So that figure in the budget on the last page of the budget is set in stone at this point. If everybody has a copy, I will briefly go. I will briefly go through the budget. On the first page, we basically have provided for the public a walkthrough of our policy plan, our proposal for presentation to the Board of Finance, which we have done earlier. And so there's a narrative that's a couple pages long. We begin in December, and we don't generally finish until the end of February or early March, mostly because some items we don't know about until that time. So it's a little bit more detail in the budget for the Board of Education. We've also given you an executive summary of the entire budget, which tells us what the proposed spending plan is for the Kellogg portion only on this page, and what our increases are, what our totals are, and so forth. It also gives a brief summary of the series in our budgets and what little series mean and what we use them for. If you go to the first page of the proposed spending plan, the 25-26, looks like this. I'll go briefly through the different series. You'll notice on the top page there is an explanation of each line in the budget. We tried to do that so that you have an idea of what we're actually talking about. The first series 100, which is the salaries, lines 1 through 6 for the certified staff, and lines 7 through 16 are for the classified staff, or what we sometimes also call the non-certified staff. Those items are all negotiated with the teachers union and a certified union. So those numbers are set right now. As of right now, if somebody was going to retire in the teachers side of it,
they would have had to tell us by February 1st. And, as you can note, we do not have anybody at Kellogg who intends on retiring, or if they do intend on retiring, they could retire. But they do not get any severance, according to the wording of the contract. In the, line 7 through 16, which is the classified or non-certified staff, again, they also have a union. And we redid a contract for them, this year. For the certified staff, just so people know, the Board of Finance are invited to our negotiation sessions as people who can stand and listen in. They can ask any questions of the Board of Education as they need be asked. On the non-certified, they don't have that. The state doesn't give that same opportunity. If you turn the page, the second series, 100 benefit series, again, all controlled by contracts, the workman's comp, employment compensation. Obviously, we plan on that through what we feel may have to happen. As you notice on line 29, for instance, on the unemployment compensation, we haven't put anything in that line because nobody has indicated that they are going to be leaving. Workman's compensation, that item we do share with the town. That's one of the first, one of the only items that we can share with the town, which reduces our cost a little bit. And the life insurance is part of the teacher package within their contract. And I'll stop at the end of each series in case somebody's got a question. I'll try to answer your question. Okay, as we move on to the 300 series, and again, basic now, series 300, all our purchase services. As you look out through the percentage of increase, you'll see that most of those are at a 0%. Some of them are negative. The food services expense is going to be a little bit different. As you may know, we do not have a cafeteria, but we do have an agreement with the high school where they will bring in hot lunches from the high school. Chad Olson, our custodian, he goes over and picks them up, so the kids do have a hot lunch if they would like to have a hot lunch. So we do provide it that in that way. We had big decreases in the telecommunications with the internet and technology support. And that is because we have a non-recurring capital account that we have been funding for a number of years, where we feel that we can tap that account if we need to do that. That would go to the request to the Board of Finance, and then that would go to if the Board of Finance they would. Then that would go to a town meeting for approval. Just as I mentioned, the Board of Finance has already reduced our budget, as Ginger mentioned, from the original that we presented by $10,000. So we've taken all that into consideration on this budget, which we are presenting to you. The series 400, again, no increases there, and a decrease on the popular lease because we're not at the end of the lease, so we figure all of that in. Any questions on 300 or 400? Okay, if we turn to series 500, that is, you do see some decreases there. Again, the decreases are in the technology hardware, which again, we will be using our technology fund if we need to do that, so that if we have needs in that area, we will certainly come to the Board of Finance to use our now recurring capital account on this. Mostly zeros, but there are a few things that are up a little bit. The daily transportation, that would be our bus contract. That's that's what, the increase is. They don't have much choice. There's only one company, in every area to transport the kids. So that is the figure that they gave, and we do have a multi-year contract with them. So that is always helpful, because we know that in advance. And again, you can see that in that series, there's a total decrease. Some school, not as many kids are going, and again, the technology hardware, which we will come back to the non-recurring capital account for that, should we need more. Any questions on that series? All right, the 600 series, those are different kinds of supplies. And we've tried to, again, keep those at zeros or negative. You will see a couple of increases. Technology application, we did have to increase that by quite a little bit. And we are locked into fuel, propane, gas prices. And we figured that in, as well as the textbooks and the hardware that we might use. A lot of it is all digitized now, so there is a cost to subscribe to that. So that total series is up about 5.29%. Any questions there? Okay, next we go into the 700 series. That is non-instructional equipment and instructional equipment, and we are minus $1,000 on that from last budget year. And on the instructional equipment, we were able to keep that same. So we're down about 14.29% in that. Series, any questions on the property? 700 series. On the 800 series, those are dues and fees. We're able to keep our dues and fees. We're in advance about the same. And Advance is a regional organization that does help us out with certain things that we need as a Board of Education, and we use them pretty frequently. They have a district, and we're in the district from the Litchfield, and Advance. Our dues and fees are down quite a bit. Last year we had a budget of about $2,900 based on what we knew last year. This year, because we only spent about $1,200, we budgeted $200 more than that, so we're down about 48% or so on that. Any questions? All right, on capital expenses. Previously, was being told by the auditors that we could not include capital technology and capital building needs into our budget. They had to be within the town budget. The Board of Selectmen has taken that over and put some money, and again, a non-recurring capital account. And we have to carry those two lines for 3 years. So we're on the second of 3 years where that will be zeroed out. So the total DHR budget is up $136,673, which is about 6.06%. As I indicated at the beginning of the presentation, our high school tuition has already been decided upon and voted upon by all 6 towns. By the way, our town overwhelmingly approved that. And within that Region 1 budget is also pupil services and administrative services. And you will see that for our town, pupil services is down about 4.88%, and so is administrative services. That's down almost 3%. So the total increase in the regional budget, which has been approved, is 8.92%. Our budget is up 6.06, altogether 7.17. But what we're looking at here is only the Kellogg budget, because the other budget, Region One budget has already been decided. We turn the page, we have given you a more thorough look at what our in-house technology proposal details are. I'd like to publicly thank Lori Wadsworth for putting this all together. She has been very helpful putting this together with the technology within the last 4 years. I do want to make it clear to everybody in the room that our work doesn't stop when the budget is passed, whatever that ends up being. Anybody who's been around the town for a while knows that as the year goes on, the fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th, we are always looking for ways to save money toward the town. And this year we do have, we do, last year actually was at the end of the year in the spring. We are allowed to have our own non-recurring capital account, and we can pay 2% of our budget if we happen to have that much left over and put it in that account. And just for your information, we all know that the roof on Kellogg School is an expensive, not detailed, it's expensive to do. And what the board has been doing and is planning is we have been designating, with the help of former custodian Bill Beebe and with our current custodian Chad Olson, we have been looking at the sections of the roof that we do. So that not recurring capital account, whatever money is in there, will be used so that when it comes time to replace the next section of roof, that we won't have to come back to the town and ask for quite so much money. The last section of roof we did this last summer, and I think that was about $110,000 to do that section of roof. So we're trying to be very, very economical about this. We're trying to save ahead of time so that the town does not have a huge bill to pay. It's going to be something, but at least we're putting toward that capital budget, and we are making sure that we are setting money aside for that project. I don't think we'll be doing anything this year. My guess is that we will have a plan for the next section of room to be done during the spring, probably, or the summer, next summer, not this summer, the summer of 26 is my guess. So that's where we are with that. And if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. Yes, sir.
Peter Johnson, Preston. How much money is in that capital?
Right now, we have a little bit over $30,000 on that non-recurring capital account. But by the way, that account is controlled by the Board of Education. That is not controlled by the county. So that's why our whole, that's the new state law. And the state law was passed in last spring that allowed us to have the capital non-reoccurring account for the Board of Education. That's a state law, it's a new state law, and we can take 2%, as I said, of our budget and put it aside if we have that much money to put aside. Our budgets are very, very tight. We usually don't have a lot of money left over unless we are able to find ways to save money during the course of the fiscal year.
So you said a new roof, next section is gonna cost around 100 grand?
No, I said what we paid for the last section. The last section was 100 grand.
And how is the next one that needs to be done is about the same size?
It could be, and
Okay.
it probably will be more expensive because it's not.
Okay, so how do you look to, if you only have 30 grand, it's gonna cost?
Because we come to the town, we come to the town and ask for the money. We do have another non-recurring capital account with the town that has some money in it as well.
How much is in that?
I believe Michelle's not here,
It's
but I believe it's about $9,000.
Right,
9,600.
yeah.
So you know, maybe we're a third of the way there, and that's better than, at least in my opinion, that's better than charging the whole thing at once. And these are things that have to be done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't
these are things
understand.
that
I'm
have to
just
be
trying
done.
to figure out where the money's coming.
It's gonna come eventually will come from the taxpayers. I mean, I'm not, you know, we're not here to fool you or anything else. That is a building maintenance that is absolutely necessary. Obviously, we want to keep our students safe, and we want to keep the building in repair. In previous years, and previous boards of selectmen, have helped us go over those things. I know that a couple of years ago, Greg was a part of that, looking at the roof, and we're also concerned it's a flat roof, which is another concern that we have. So we have to be very careful about bearing that goes on the roof. That's why it's gonna be, you know, we've looked at the possibility of solar panels. But again, that costs money too, and we're very, very skeptical of some parts of the roof trying to push it in. And we don't want to put it on the ground because it is too close to where the children's playground.
So we're looking at a major expense coming up to do the, that the taxpayers will need to spend, let's say, provide more money.
Not this year, not in this budget.
Next, I'm just going to add for clarity, that this has been the case for 40 years. This is one of the reasons that we established the non-recurring capital reserve accounts. And they're always funded adequately for when the time comes to deal with the roof, and the roof is dealt with compartmentally over time. But what the Board of Education has done recently is dealt with by having the roof assessed. We found areas of it that would normally have dictated the whole section where those areas could be caused and dealt with, which has extended the life of the roof. If I'm not wrong.
No, you're not, you're absolutely right.
So that, I feel that question has been asked and answered, sir. Good.
Okay, let's,
No, you're true, picture for that. Line 73. There's a 36.36% increase in technology application. What drives that up?
1 second, let me find it. Let me get it.
Page 11, I believe.
I'm getting there. Okay, line 73,
Yes,
technology application.
yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
and what was your question?
My question is, what's driving that up?
Well, technology application, if you look up in the narrative there, technology application, are obviously are things that we need for technology. It's network, administrative, student data, mandated regional application, student instructional application. And that is all explained, that line is all explained in more detail, thanks to Lori, where she has put it together in the technology budget, which is a 2-page addition to the end of our budget. Any other questions that I can answer?
Yeah, one more question. Sorry that I came late and you may already answer this question. How many students show up right now?
Right now, we have 68 students.
How many were last year?
Um,
What's the increase or decrease?
it's about the same.
Let's say.
Yeah.
How about high school?
High school, let me get my other, I can tell you, if I can go back to my secrets, I do have that.
Just trying to understand, you know, per student.
Well, remember the 8th grade, not everybody in the 8th grade class goes to the high school.
Yeah.
Some of them go to private school, some of them go to Oliver Wilcox. If you register 7, I do have that information.
She was looking for the per pupil cost.
Well, let me get it, have it in here. But again, I'm happy to answer questions, but all this was explained in the hearing, for the regional.
He's looking for the Kellogg per pupil.
Well, as I said, it was all explained, you know, have that here. Let's see. All right, we are called a member town, okay? And as a member town, we have the 24-25. We have 29 students at the high school. That's that's what you want to know. Okay,
What was it the previous year? Are we growing or?
we have grown. And by 23-24, it was 23.
Excellent. Good stuff. And you say Kellogg's elementary school is kind of level,
Yes.
anticipated to be level next year too, kind of?
Actually, my understanding so far is that we have a few kids, I think there are 10 or 11 kids in the 8th grade right now. Is that right, Lori?
8.
8? Okay. And I know of at least 2 kids that will not be going to the high school. One will be going to, no, one that'll be going to private school and one is probably going to Oliver Wolf.
So no big increases, no big drop offs.
That's, it has remained stable for the last number of years.
And then did you have a per pupil expenditure?
Well, let's see. It's not a per pupil expenditure. Oh, wait a minute. The net cost per pupil for everything, okay? For the assessment, looks like it's about $13.65.
Excuse me, 13,000? What? Or 1,300?
And that's kind of, yeah, that $13.65 would be times the number of kids that we.
I would like to add for clarity. That's what is considered to be an imputed tuition, whereas actually most of it relates to fixed costs, which doesn't vary significantly with regard to the number of students as to the total cost. But the more students divided into the fixed costs lowers the imputed tuition.
Right, and the other thing you have to remember that there are 3 different numbers for that. There is one, the original school services center. There is one for pupil services center, and there is one for Housatonic Valley Regional High School, and they're all a little bit different. And again, as I said, all this was presented at a hearing in early April, where all of this was gone over, and it was also, I believe, it was also taped or whatever you call it, and you can go to the hearing on the Region 1 website, and if you want to listen to the hearing and the presentation, you can find it there. But it's different for each of those 3 things. When we vote on Region 1, we are actually combining 3 different sections: high school, pupil services, and regional school services center.
If there's no objection, could we move on?
As far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if you think of something later on, I will be here for the whole meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Carter, brief interview, spending plan and request for funding that was originally submitted to the Board of Finance. I'm going to ask you to save your question for comparing that with the Board of Finance. If you some students have questions, do that to determine the rate of the
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public hearing. Tonight, we will review the proposed municipal spending plan for the town of Canaan for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2026. Before I go any further, just want to let you know, I didn't work on this all by myself. I'd like to introduce my fellow selectmen. Where are they? Judy Jacobs over here and Chris Kinsella over here. We all worked very, very diligently on it, putting it together and putting the numbers together. We are here to provide information and answer any questions about the budget process and the proposed spending plan. And I want to let you know this plan reflects our commitment to serving our residents by providing essential services that have become usual and customary in our town in a very efficient manner, while navigating a very challenging economic landscape. And I don't need to tell any of you who are homeowners, who have a home budget, how difficult these waters are in navigating at this point in time. As I go through this budget, I'm going to go not line by line, but highlight what has changed in each particular series. And when I talk about what has changed in that particular series, I will mention what the Board of Selectmen have proposed and what has been proposed by the Board of Finance. I'd like to thank you all for being here. One thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind, if you look at the rate of inflation over the last, well, let's say since 2020, the rate of inflation in 2020 was 1.2%, 2021, 4.7%, 2022, 8%, average 2023, 4.1%, 2024, 2.9%, and as of April, we won't have what it is in May until June 11th. They're always a month behind. We're running about 2.4%. So when you look at these numbers, understand the pencil that costs 5 cents now costs more, an average of 3% because of inflation. If I may, moderator,
May I ask you for clarity's sake, the aggregate of inflation and the cost of goods and services since 2020?
and
The sum of all those.
it will be the sum of all. Okay.
You're correct. On the previous year.
On the previous year. Thank you.
Well, you know.
We will start first with our 1001 series selectments expenses. I'll point out, number one, that the first selectman and my fellow selectmen have not taken any raise since we have been in office. We go down to 2 new items at the bottom of the 1001 series. One is the micro bike grant that you'll see that's new for 24-25. That is the grant that we received. We received 2 $5,000 grants for a total of $10,000. That line is put in there. That money is spent, but it is aligned in the budget. The other new line that we put in was cemetery sexton for 25-26 and for a stipend of $1,200. The reason we put that in, we've never had anyone but volunteer cemetery sextons. I look back at Mr. Allen and realize that for a number of years he did it. I think there may be someone else in the crowd. Forgive me if I don't mention you. But we're in a brand new era where we can digitize things and so forth. So our current cemetery sexton, Tracy Wilson, has picked up that ball and she started to put everything together in our 5 town cemeteries. So what we're looking for is to actually compensate her with a stipend. And I might point out she's already secured for us an $8,000 grant for neglected cemeteries. So she's already paid for herself this year. Town hall expenses, 1,002. Again, you'll see that there was a rise in telephone services. I'm just going to use this term, it's the cost of doing business. They went up, just like your electricity bill went up in your telephone service. Fuel oil, we actually had a savings because we locked in at $2.73 per gallon. I hope we did the right thing. I hope it's not, bottom's going to fall out of it. Maybe then we'll renegotiate. Right now, last October, the way things looked, this was the best deal to lock in at that particular place. Cleaning, you'll see, went up 2.5%. Okay. Our building repairs and maintenance, we looked at putting more money in for building repairs, so it's up. Not a significant amount, $1,000. You're going to go to legal expense. Town council, we had been asking for $5,000. That was our proposal. The Board of Finance reduced it to $1,000. That was a drop of $4,000 there. Litigation, again, our proposed was to have a $2,500 in, that was dropped to $1 by the finance. Probate court again is down. 1,005, the Board of Assessors. They are down overall. And what you'll see where they're down is primarily in schooling. Again, because we have our certified assessor, David Johnson, and her assistant. So they Teresa Graney, so they're both certified at this point in time. And if you remember, computer services went up last year because of vision and QDS. So it's not this year. That's 1,005 assessors. 1,006, Board of Assessment Appeals remains the same. 1,007, Board of Finance, cut their secretary down to let me double check the number of meetings here, but they were cut $760, down 34.5%, well, 34.55%. Our audit, of course, was up. That's by contract with King and King Associates. County services also went down. Our tax collector, 1,008. What you have to look at with our tax collector, all right, what we did was continuing education courses and course fees moved from former teachers and training to law. That's why you see the changes there. And mileage added for attending conferences and so. Any questions? 1,009 treasurer. Of course, what you'll see here, aside from the raises, is bank fees. That was a new line in 24, 25. This is for direct deposit for our town employees. We're finally moving into the 20th century, 21st. So with direct deposit. That's the 1,009. 1010, town clerk. More hours for the town clerk. Excuse me, assistant town clerk. Again, you can't train a new town clerk without the assistant town clerk, without having the assistant town clerk there to learn. You also notice that our town clerk should be certified or will be certified, and that is a $3,300 boost in certification. 1011, planning and zoning. Very important here to look at the planning and zoning. The zoning enforcement officer no longer exists. The line is still there for $1. What has happened is it has all been rolled into the ZEO planner, which you'll see at the bottom line. It's also the consultant engineer planner. If you look at those lines, I would really call your attention to the bottom line. What we looked at, you'll see that there is certainly an increase, and I know we will get questions on this, and luckily we have some people here from planning and zoning who can help me answer those questions. But again, we rolled all those jobs into one at the end, and we plan to have some serious work done over the next year, next couple of years. So again, our proposed 29,060, and that was proposed 26,160 by the Board of Finance. 1012, zoning board of appeals. stays. Registrar of voters, if you remember last year, because we're early voting, it was an increase. This is not a presidential year, so there has been a drop in that. Early voting. Insurance stayed flat, line 1015. Benefits, line 1016. Again, you'll notice that with the pension plan, of course, with an increase in salaries, it will go up. But what you'll also notice is in the retiree spouse benefits, it went down. Then 17, economic development, just another placeholder for another year. Public health. Torrington Health District, there's some good news and some bad news here. Bad news is it went up by $22. The good news is that's because we have a larger population in town. So it's per capita.
Mr. Barger, how many years has the imputed tax per capita for the Canaan area health district remained the same?
As long as I can remember. And I have a long memory. But again, it's per capita. The Houston Youth Service Bureau, we rounded up to $4,000. That's an addition of $236. Mental health services, and we're assessed for that, and that's up to $7,500. 1019 social services. I wish our social service agent was here this evening, but I'll give it to her, and I'll say this publicly. She was like a pit bull with the Northwest Transit District. Just to let some of you know, not only is our tax collector a pit bull, but our social services director is a pit bull. And I mean that complimentary sense, keeping very, very close records on things, but the Northwest Transit District had been overcharging us. They were charging us for people being transported from North Canaan. And our social service agent caught that, and it has been corrected. But of course, it doesn't help us when we get down to the end, where we have to, at the end of 1019, special trips for the Northwest Transit District. Now we have put in the budget $1,500 because any special trip they may take, what we're being charged. 1020, the daycare center, no change. Excuse me, I should say down. Above. 1021, street lights remain the same. General assistance remains the same, line 1022. 1023, funds for non-municipal public benefit activities. The Falls Village Canaan Historical Society, we have increased by $750. The GM Hunt Library, our increase was $1,000. Line 1024, Conservation Commission and Wetlands remains the same. General Public Safety, once again, we'll look at 911 Litchfield Dispatch. The cost per capita has gone up, and plus is per capita, so as the population grows, the cost goes up. Constables, we have held at $100 for a number of years, and I have to be honest in saying we've never spent that money. I'm asking for $1,000 this year as the lead constable. And what we want to do is finally, after a number of years, equip our personnel, our 7 constables, with the best that are OSHA and ANSI certified, as well as flashlights, so that we can use them on a regular basis to help with functions such as Halloween, the Christmas parties at the rec center, rec director holds and so forth for the town. It's just, we're looking at utilizing them more. But in order to utilize them, we have to give them the proper equipment. And if we give them something that's not OSHA or not ANSI certified, we have a problem. 1028, the non-recurring capital accounts. As you remember last year, we took 15% in all of them. This year, we reinstated that 15% plus. Let me just go down. Fire truck reserve is up 17.65. Heavy equipment reserve, we had asked for, should say, our DPW manager had asked for $35,000. That was cut. Okay. Truck reserve, and those of you who've been around heavy equipment know how much some of this equipment costs. It's not getting any more inexpensive, not getting any cheaper at all. And our DPW manager again had asked for a substantial increase because we're not on a capital plan yet, Chairman Betty, but we're looking at a capital plan, and in order to make a plan like that work, we have to look at putting a little bit more money into our non-recurring capital accounts. Again, as you go down, you'll see that 17.65%. So 15% plus what we also put. Our ambulance reserve, we asked for additional money there. From 15,000 to 20,000, an increase of 5,000. Because we're coming up on replacement for the ambulance. Going over to 1202, 107 Main Street property. Again, fuel oil, because we locked in there. Railroad Street property, 1203, 35 Railroad Street, we still own. 2001 Fire Commission. We have an increase of $5,000 in equipment maintenance, hydrants and water, through some work with the Fire Commission and through our Board of Selectmen. We've able to readjust the cost of our fire hydrants and the fire hydrant water. So we're down $5,000 there. Communications, again, technology, as you had heard in the Board of Education, technology is not getting any more inexpensive, it's getting more expensive. And that also goes with communications, that technology. Physical exams. Number one, any of you who've been to the doctor lately know that physical exam, the cost goes up. And again, we have a good problem here. And a bad problem. The one problem is that it's going to cost more. The good problem is we have more members of the volunteer fire department and ambulance squad.
Yeah.
So again, there's a yin and a yang here. That also goes with training. You'll see that there was an increase of $1,000 or asked for in training. Again, good problem, bad problem. It's going to cost $1,000 more to train, but we have more people. 3001 Department of Public Works. The only increase there is on the road maintenance, construction, drainage. That's an additional $10,000. We look at that for some repairs to our guardrails, signage that we need around town. So an extra $10,000 there. Series 3002, town garage. Again, remain fairly stagnant except for fuel oil, which again, is locked in at a lower price than that. 4001, Recreation Commission, you'll see that the Creative Kids Club no longer exists. Chemicals and supplies gone up to, it's gone up, $2,000. Reason being is, last year, we opened the pool before July 1st, before the beginning of fiscal year. Last week, I would have told you we would be opening up early this year. Today, I'm not too sure, to be perfectly honest. So again, that is, we may have to open the pool earlier than usual. We hope to open it up before July 1, but again, we're preparing that for that with chemicals and supply. I put all my plants outside, it's looking a little cold. Electric up for the pool pump, maintenance and repairs. Substantial increase there, $2,000. Waste management, line 6001. Our disposal charge, or known as our tipping fee, has gone up to $136 a ton. For municipal solid waste. And again, I think I was very transparent last year talking about it. Again, municipal solid waste is a real tough subject here in the state of Connecticut. I can tell you that we were looking at forming a regional waste authority. That was voted down by Mayor for on that at our next board of selectmen meeting. The total proposed municipal budget as proposed by the board of selectmen, Chairman Betty, was $2,294,000. Excuse me, $2,294,024. And the adjusted budget that the board of finance came back with $2,056,500.6. An increase of $95,722. Did good to see some of our debt service down 1.54%. Total government budget is up 4%.
Now, we ask you to reserve your questions for Chairman Betty. If there's any questions that you have, especially regarding their or rest funding, with the draft that has been presented here by the Board of Finance and by the Board of. And Mr. Harger, you may answer questions that through Chairman Betty that relate to the appearance between the two.
Thank you, Mr. Timlock. Thank you, Chairman Betty.
Chairman Betty, I see no reason that I need to recognize people. I think we have a good crowd here. I'll try to stay out of it unless there seems to be some hang up that it appears to be an inordinate delay.
Thank you.
Right, Marlo, I know a lot of quality time before last meeting. And with that, I did some reflecting. And so since everybody's on the same page, we had for more transparency reasons, billing reasons, we took our CEO planner line to make one in person and in one interaction with the public. Planner, our employee could be a planner and a field zoning enforcement officer. So to get it more accurate, we thought it would be more transparent and better to have it as one line. So that's why we took CEO down to $1, planning consultant brought in $1,000, which we did outside here. So we and we made the new CEO planner line. So we were cut last year $10,000. We asked to get back to half of what we were, for 5,000. After lots of healthy discussions, understanding that cuts need to be made, it's tough on every department. The, Board of Finance suggested or had put in $2,000. We understand where that came from. I understand where it came from as chairman. We'll do our best to stay within that. Just understand as you know, that we may need, we know, we expect to have more work. That's why we requested to get back maybe to the 1,000 or the 10,000 that was removed. But we do our best. With that being said, I also reflected on a conversation we had on the legal expense. And it was said, $2,000 in a lawsuit's not gonna do anything. I just wanted, I wasn't quick enough, maybe I was too tired that night. It's not about a lawsuit. The legal line for the planning and zoning, if we get into a lawsuit, we're gonna need the cooperation of the board of selectmen and the board of finance team and whatever we, But, thankfully with our current CEO planner, we haven't needed legal opinions. She's very good. She's very professional in that area. But the zoning, planning and zoning, it gets more complicated every year. The easy stuff has long been developed, so now we're to the more difficult. If an application comes in front and is presented to the planning and zoning, and our CEO planner and myself as chairman and the whole commission have a legal question that we need to answer because we're unsure. And we want to, our whole goal always is to minimize risk to the whole, to our work. If we need a legal opinion and we have $1, to get a legal opinion, I have to present as chairperson to the board of selectmen to request from the board of finance $350. I'm just making a number up. The legal opinion on this application, timestamp is already potentially running at 65 days. In municipal life, nothing happens quickly. In professional life, we can make decisions by 6 in the morning. Municipal life, I've been in a long time. It's not 30 days, it's lightning quick.
Mr. Marlowe, would you explain that timestamp and the deadline and what that means?
Yeah. Thank you. So what that means is, if a site plan is deemed complete, we have 65 days to render a decision. And in planning and zoning, a lot of times it's you can't deny it. So if we don't get a decision within that 65-day frame because we don't want to curse out in a position of jeopardy, by default, that application is approved. I think I'm saying wrong. I think it's approved, but it's by right. So whether we agree with it or not, it's, a determination. So a lot of that long time being spent, I would ask for some money. I would ask for half of the 2,000. I'd be happy with $750. If it was 500, I could live with it. It's just the concept so that we can act quickly if needed on behalf of the town, not on behalf of nobody on the commission benefits from it. It's purely to give us movement to get a render a legal opinion. It's not quite a lawsuit. It's minimal amount of money. And I think that the payback potential to the town would pay back not tenfold, it would pay back. So I would please ask you to reconsider that line item, add in a little minimum amount of money, which is not even going to be around.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to address the,
Would you introduce yourself?
I wanted to address.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Ruth Mulcahy,
Thank you.
and I,
You would have to be through the Chairman Betty.
Chairman Bennett, thank you. I wanted to address that because in the state of Connecticut, there's a federation that each town can join. And one of the leading land use attorneys, Steve Byrne, runs that. And you can get free verbal opinions right away for your planning and zoning if you join the federation. Used to be $150 a year. He also will come to your planning and zoning commission and train them and handing out training materials, but as a full-time CEO and planner in several different towns, I use that service constantly. And Attorney Byrne answered questions within a few days. And it never, as long as it's a verbal opinion, it's free. And you can get almost 99% of your questions answered quickly to, adhere to the content. Just.
Thank you.
And it might be something that the town of Canaan should consider.
Thank you.
Andrea Downs. So, after the marathon meeting, last week or whenever it was, I had a home and really thought about a few things that came up during that meeting. The first thing that I thought about was, think it might be helpful for us to have this public hearing prior to the work that you all did at that Board of Finance meeting, because you had not heard from us yet. Okay, and I think it's really important for the Board of Finance to not just hear from the people in their small circle or my small circle or whatever, but to actually hear from the people of Falls Village at large and what they're actually looking for in a budget or a spending plan, I should say, prior to putting all of that time and energy into changing the proposed spending plan presented to you by the Board of Finance or by the Board of Selectmen. I'm sure that if there was a mandate from this group to significantly reduce the budget, that the Board of Selectmen would go back to work and attempt to do that, cutting in the areas that people are asking them to make cuts. So that's just my first thought. So think about that when you're considering the process next year, please. Amy?
Can I just ask a quick question? Just, I don't know, when we come to the town with a hearing, with a spending plan recommendation, we have to, do we have to feel comfortable with those numbers in order to recommend it to town hearing?
May I interject that submitting, in theory, you're submitting a draft. So that the people may hear from you as both to your rationale and with your publication, see what it is. So they may hear from you, and upon that consideration of your draft, you will hear from them and make revisions as necessary, predicated on the people's having heard and the remarks you've heard here, and so that your final that is submitted to the town meeting will be as a product of having heard this here. And by the way, this is in no way a substitute for the right of the people to speak at a deliberative town meeting where action will take place. So there's even a final bit of discussion. But the one thing that I caution you all on, that upon that final deliberation at that town meeting, you may reduce lines, but you may not increase them.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sure. So the second thing that I wanted to address is the reoccurring capital accounts. Specifically, I'm thinking about this is always the first lines cut in every budget or reduced when you're thinking about reducing the budget. They're large ticket items. It's easy to do. You can get a significant amount of money cut very quickly. I'm going to caution you against that, and I have some thoughts about that. First of all, so Tim, my husband, who's on a fire call, but was going to be here, and he has given me permission to make these statements. So he says, so his plan is to work 10 more years, give or take. No one in his position who follows him, I mean, maybe, but I struggle to believe this person will exist, is going to be willing to fix all of the equipment at the level that Tim fixes equipment instead of asking for it to be replaced. Okay, so he saves this town thousands and thousands of dollars every single year. He gives a whole new definition to frugal, and
trust me, I know, because I live it. But he really cares about this town and he makes the most of every piece of equipment he can get. He gets things from auction instead of buying new because he knows that he can fix it. He's a tool and die maker. He's making parts in our barn for equipment here in the town, so the town doesn't have to spend money. So I just want you to think about that when you're cutting the equipment cost for the truck cost. I also don't think that your next town crew foreman is going to be content with a 25 and 30-year replacement plan for trucks and equipment. So when you're cutting that line, think about what it's going to cost us to have to take loans and pay interest on those loans instead of us funding those reoccurring accounts every year. And although it's not a lot of money, we're making interest on it instead of paying interest. It just seems to me, it makes more sense for us to hold the money, make a little money on it, than take a note against it so that we can buy equipment that we know that we're gonna have to replace. Okay, so that's just some things that, that I thought about. The fourth thing that I really wanted to talk about is you asked for some creative thinking. So I went to work on that. I don't think a lot of people in this room are gonna like my creative thinking, but I'm going to put it out there and give you all something to think about. It has to do with our school model. Okay, there's a couple of different school models that we could look at that would save all the towns in Region 1 a lot of money. The first being, we could combine with one of the other elementary schools in this town. I understand wanting to keep an elementary school in your community. So maybe one of the towns keeps a K-4, the other community keeps the 5-8. That's one option. The other option is to see about bringing the entire middle school to the high school. When I first started on the Board of Education, that high school had twice as many students as it does today. There is space in that building, I'm sure. I haven't spoken to them, but by knowing what I know, I would say that there's probably room. So those are things that we could look at. We haven't done a study on this since, I guess there was one many years ago, but not in my time being involved with the community. So those are things that I'm just suggesting that could be looked at if we wanted some creative thinking. The last thing that I just want to say is that we are a small town with a small population. We have wonderful services, including but not limited to an elementary school, elderly services, social services, road maintenance, a beautiful recreation center, a recreation commission that is putting together innumerable activities, a library, a daycare, a children's theater, a fire department, a historical society. All of these organizations are funded to some degree by tax dollars. How do we decide who is most deserving? As almost everyone in this room takes advantage of one or more of these organizations. All of the organizations also use and benefit volunteer services in addition to their paid staff. We are a rich and vibrant community. It takes tax dollars to continue to support this standard of life in rural America. And to me, it seems like money well spent.
The chairman of the board be directed to the specifics that are published today. I appreciate the philosophy, as you know, I think, but this is not exactly the place for it. I'm not regretting that you spoke. I ask that we keep the questions and concerns to the specific.
Well, obviously, being on the Board of Selectmen, I will address some of what Andrea, I've been on both the Board of Selectmen, as you guys know, and the Board of Education. As far as high school goes, there is not room at the high school to do what Andrea suggests.
Pat, I disagree with you or agree with you, but this is not a full-ranging discussion about the future.
I understand, but do I not have a right to respond to something that she said that refers to education?
Speaking for the people who are here to hear what the Board of Finance has to say.
Okay, well, let me just say that I would like to discuss this further with you. We have done studies about this. The other thing I would like to indicate is that I did not mention who was on the Board of Education, and I would like to give those people credit, would be Emily Peterson, Adam Shear, Maria Wilson, Teresa Grady, and myself, who have many meetings and and I don't know how to address what Andrea said, but I will just limit it to the fact that in terms of space, there is not space at the high school. And the only other thing I will say is that a concept of like of a junior high school has been looked at in the past, and towns in this district have not wanted that because they are they really believe that their local elementary schools is the way to go with the K-8 program.
Thank you.
And that's all I will say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would ask that the subject of your questions and concerns be directed to the subject matter at the Board of Finance.
And that I think would also be not the Board of Finance decision anyway.
Peter Jensen again. First off, I'd like to say thanks to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen to put the budget together. It's always a monumental task. Very different. So I think you do deserve some credit for that. Now, let's get into some questions. Do I understand that this budget being 4% above last year's request amounts that were budgeted is causing a $93,000 increase in the budget? Okay, yeah. So I have a series of questions around here, but the very first one I want to ask is, how do you proceed filling that gap?
How do we proceed filling that gap?
Yes, where are you going to get the extra money?
We have a couple options.
Yeah, so let's hear what they.
The one option is obviously right off the bat is increasing taxes.
Yep.
Second option would be to dip into the general fund.
Okay.
So those are the two that we're looking at right now.
Okay, good. So, there was a lady in front of me suggested that maybe a review, let's say a survey of people, what do people want in town about a budget? I can tell you right away, I do not want to see an increase in taxes. Okay, we did an assessment here rather recently on properties. My assessment went up like 30%. It was like, really kind of blew me away. I really don't want to see any increases in taxes. So now to the series of questions again. So there is a possibility to take money out of a general fund.
Sure.
How much money is in the general fund, or what do you anticipate being in the general fund at the end of the fiscal year?
Our current anticipation is approximately $950 to $1 million. That is holding the reserve for the $125,000 if the steep grant comes to fruition.
Okay, so
That's
there's
sounded
10 times the amount available in the general fund to fund 1/10 of that amount could fund the increase. What you think? 950,000 and the amount that is needed on this shortfall here from last year, the increase is 93,000.
Can I?
Now,
I think you might be leaving a piece out.
Yeah,
excuse me?
I think you're leaving a piece of it out. You're focusing on the increase from last year's budget
Yeah.
to this year's budget. But we were in a deficit last year as well. So the real hole that we have to fill is not just the $90,000 or so that you made. It's the difference between the expenditures that we are in draft form recommending to the town and how much revenue we expect to collect. And that's a much larger hole.
Yeah, there's, as I said, there will be a series of questions here that I have, and maybe that'll start to address that issue, okay?
Well,
Because
that's the way.
I should have asked first, what do you anticipate at the end of this fiscal year being an overage, a surplus, or a deficit from the budget from last year? Do you see a surplus in money, or do you see a deficit? So in other words, we voted a budget last year. At the end of this fiscal year, we will have spent all of it, not all of it, or more than. it? You have any idea?
Yeah,
Because then that would
Pretty
be
darn, you're right.
addresses your issue a bit.
Right now, I think it's a deficit, but not a huge one.
Pardon me?
Right now, the projection is a deficit, but not
Now,
60, I think was what Michelle gave us.
We appropriated $150,000 last year
From the
from the
general
general fund to meet the shortfall. We're gonna use some portion of that, not all of it. Maybe about half of it. We're waiting for final numbers.
so 75,000, they came up,
Plus or minus 20.
so 950,000 in a general fund. That is not designated, just general fund. Of which 75,000 has to go in to meet our shortfall from last year. And let's say if we took the 93,000 to meet this budget, that would leave what, 775,000, 750,000, more than 750,000. Is $750,000 in a general fund based on what our budget is, and remember, this is money taxpayers have already paid too, and they paid many years ago. They too, so it's been sitting there. It gets moved around, I understand, but is $750,000 an adequate amount as a reserve? I mean, what is like a standard? What should be kept as a reserve? You have a sense?
Yeah, we have.
Could you, the board of finance, say what the accountants suggest percentage of the.
Yep, go ahead. You've already
The,
got it rolling.
The auditors recommend that we reserve, anywhere from 10 to 15% of the annual budget.
and what would 750,000
Let
be?
me just fill it out. 10, that's what the auditors say. The
Okay,
Connecticut Conference on Municipalities recommends a slightly higher range. Our auditors said for a town of our size, because if you have a major expense, it's as expensive for us as it is for a much richer town. So they advised us to be on the more conservative side.
15,
So last year, we adopted a policy that we would keep the general fund at least equal to 12.5% of our budget. So round numbers, we can take the general fund consistent with that policy down to about 800,000.
okay. So there's money very close in the general fund to pay for the shortfall from last year, as well as this budget increase this year. It's about there, right?
I don't think we look at it the way you are looking at it.
I look at it that way for a reason. I look at it that way because I don't want to spend any more money in tax.
We will use the general fund and tax increases to meet the shortfall. What I meant when I said we don't look at it quite that way, we're not looking at it as though we have to pay last year's shortfall. We have a general fund, which will be influenced in size by the amount of last year's shortfall. That's a given number. Treasurer will present that to us. We'll take that number and see how much of it we can take out to cover our spending plan. And to the extent we can't dip below that, we have to raise taxes, which is why we asked Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen to trim their budgets a bit so it wouldn't all fall on the taxpayers. So I think you can rest assured that we're not unmindful that taxpayers are bearing a good deal of the increase in costs due to 1,000 different factors.
Good. Well, again, since this is a meeting to express what townspeople want, my desire is not to see taxes. And it seems to me that there is adequate money in the general fund to be used. So I would say express the desire to use that money rather than raise taxes.
I have a question from Jesse.
Hi, I'm Jess Bartle. This is my very first town public hearing here in Falls Village. I've been here about 7 years, so very exciting, very big things going on. I just want to say that I feel like it makes a lot of sense to have an increase in almost everything. Inflation is up, so everything's going to cost more, especially for the school. And I feel like the school is a big reason why young families are moving to the town. And people, and also the recreation committee, we're doing the things that Salisbury has always done. And it's very exciting to me. At the same time, my property taxes also have gone up like 30%. And I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. So like the idea of creative thinking and a combination of both. And I wanted to say that because I feel like this is our chance to help you guys know what we're thinking.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Stephen Hodgson, Music Mountain Road, and also on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I just wanted to sort of say that the planning and zoning budget's about, we wanted 37,000, we came back, I think we're right around 32.5. That's 0.5% of the town budget. It's a very, very small amount. But I think trying to add to that, to the betterment of our community is very important. We have 2 subdivisions coming forth. We have one we're gonna meet with at our meeting tomorrow. We have the site plan we have to start. So very important that we have a town planner. We use it. We worked within our budget team last year, but we also didn't accomplish everything that we wanted to try to accomplish this year. I think it's very important that we can't keep sort of staying behind. I think we need to be an aggressive board. I think it's very important for us to be moving forward and trying to get things accomplished for our community. So I wanted to make sure that people understood that the planner and the CEO are very important positions in the town. I do want to reiterate what Greg said. The use of a lawyer is not for litigation. Planning and zoning is the most unprotected board in town for litigation. It's really so we can get advice. So if a site plan comes to us at tomorrow's meeting, we have 65 days to respond to that plan. If it's met every requirement, it's automatically approved if we do nothing. It's very important for us to be able to act. We have one meeting, we usually try to meet with them the next meeting because that's 30 days. If we haven't pushed out to 2 meetings, we're at 60 days. That gets very tight with a 5-day window, one way or the other, if we can't solve the issue within just 2 meetings. So I wanted to make sure that the people of the community know that stuff happens before we can even go to a board of finance for them to then approve money, for then us to then contact a lawyer. It slows what we need to do. And there's rules and regulations and laws that we have to abide by that are required by the state. So I wanted to at least say that. I also wanted to say that we have a 3,000, we asked for a $3,000, $5,000 increase and only got 3,000. It was only half, as Greg said, of budgeting that was taken away from us from the year before. So I don't even think we were asking for that much. The Board of Ed cuts 13,500 from a $3.9 million budget, and they're praised for finding such great savings. Our Board of Selectmen have a $2.3 million budget. They had a hard time finding $10,000, with some of that coming from our line item. The Board of Finance had to try to find other money within that to get to their 49,000 from the $2.3 million budget. So I want to say that we've been working very hard as a board to stay within that and to work within the budgets given, but we also need to fight for what we need to benefit the community as well. Thank you.
Would like to say that the idea of the hearing is to hear as many distinct points of view as possible. And let's try not to be repetitive when they're well expressed in one case.
I just want to say, I agree with both what the planning and zoning has said. I served on that for many, many years, and it is a very tough, it's a very tough commission, and you better not cut off your nose to spite your face, as my mother used to tell me. So I agree with them that I wish you would restore what they are asking for in that budget. The other thing that I think is really, really important, one of the things that we want to make sure, I think, at least from my point of view, living here as long as I have, I think we want to make sure that our town remains vibrant and doesn't become gentrified. And sometimes the only way to do that is to we have to raise taxes to keep up with what needs to be done to maintain that vibrancy. And I don't want the town to cut off their nose to spite their face, to put it very plainly, in those terms. I cannot think of one. I know, Ginger, I'm pretty sure that you met with each, at least you, right? Met with each board or commission. So it's not as if the Board of Finance, didn't do its due diligence in terms of knowing what was going on with each board or commission. And the same with the Board of Education. I think that we have to be very, very careful. We have to be realistic about this. If we have some small increase in taxes, so be it. And I can't speak as well as Hazel might speak to the assessment, but the assessment works a little bit differently than it's been presented here tonight, I believe. So, just because your assessment went up $30,000 doesn't mean that your taxes are going to go up that much either. So I think there's got to be a better understanding of that. And the other thing too, that I think John mentioned in what he said a little bit a little while ago, is that we have very little debt in this town. I think, and maybe Michelle is back, I think, somewhere. I think the only real debt we have is a small debt from one bond plus the firehouse. Is that correct, Michelle? I cannot think of another town in this, really, except maybe for Salisbury, okay, in the state that has so little debt as we have. And I think we are fiscally responsible. I think we remain fiscally responsible as we go through each annual year. And again, as I said, we have to be realistic about this. The library and the school are among the gems of this town. And it's really, really important that even people that won't have kids at Kellogg School, and I'm going to be one of those because my grandson is in 8th grade, right? That we support the school at a reasonable level, and we do the same for the town. I think it's really important if we want to keep our town vibrant. And the other thing is, we do almost everything. We do almost everything voluntarily. And sometimes it's really hard to get volunteers. So people who have concerns about budgets, wherever they may be, and for whatever reason, I would urge them to join a board or commission and help keep that vibrancy of the town and maybe understand a little bit better how our towns work to keep it that way.
Thank you. But I asked that questions and concerns, direct subject matter that has not been addressed yet.
Which is good.
I just have a question that bugs me. 2.5 years ago, we went through a reassessment. That reassessment was quite startling, if you will, excessive for many of them. Now, we are talking about the possibility of a raise in taxes. What is the relationship? The assessment on our properties by so much. The mill rate is dropped in, I don't remember.
Mr. Sinclair,
And what's the result of that in the long term?
Mr. Sinclair,
We're gonna have another assessment in 2.5 years.
Mr. Sinclair, I'd like to quote Miles Blodgett, who was the first elected.
That's a long time ago.
We like to quote Miles Blodgett, who you
Yeah.
remember and we remember. And he said, assessments don't cause taxes.
That's right.
He said to me, spending causes taxes.
Uh-huh.
So spending is the issue we're addressing here. The assessments don't cause taxes.
That's
spending does.
inflation.
Spending does, and that's what these people are responsible for submitting
I
a
understand.
spending plan.
So you're saying that it's inflation.
That's a
that
fact.
has caused this disparity.
If constant dollars, when the constant dollar value decreases, you need more of them to purchase things. That's separate from the question of assessment and taxes. It adds to the difficulty that these people have to put up with, and that these people, and that she has to put up with.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is that there's a misconception that assessments automatically raise your taxes. Spending raises your taxes or lowers your taxes, not assessment.
I understand an assessment doesn't automatically
Well,
raise your tax.
I'm taking up the time of this, and I just wanted to make that clear. And I remember Miles telling me that very strongly.
Like 50 years ago, Louis?
But
50 years ago.
But it hasn't changed.
No, no. Is there any other thoughts of different or?
yeah, I mean, some of the people on the finance board have changed since I last was at a finance meeting. Some are still there, but I do remember that there was request to have the general fund amount better presented to public, the taxpayer. I don't see that. Furthermore, the secured capital funds, they was also the amount was also supposed to be presented. I haven't seen that either.
Those are presented monthly at the Board of Finance meetings. So they are in the minutes.
No, that's.
You need to attend meetings to get that information.
Where's your numbers?
The general fund is, we do have a projection that, our treasurer does present, the general fund balance every month, and it is in the Board of Finance meeting.
Okay, so what I'm not suggesting is I have no complaint about the budget necessarily and understand that things have gone up. The taxpayers have been paying money over the years into a fund, a general fund. What I'm suggesting is let's use some of that money that's been paid and not raise more money in taxes this year.
Mr. President,
And they've always said they want to try to look at that.
very clear. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
I just have a statement. Very related to this.
It is. If you let her do it, you gotta let him do it.
So I would ask you to put forward the Board of Selectmen's proposed budget.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
That's
That was fair. Chris,
Yeah, Chris, it's I don't know who's gonna be on the board of selectmen next year. I hope, three of us will serve again as a, board if allowed. The suggestion that I would like to make is our budget process, our budget formulating process be held, in the evenings when it's more accessible to the town. But by the voters of the town, and they can allow to put their input, then. This year we had them in, when it was convenient for us three, and it really probably wasn't fair.
Are there any more questions
Yeah,
on the Board of Finance that pertain to the subject matter that has been presented today?
Yes, I do. This morning. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I shouldn't say anything, but I gotta say something, because it bothers me. Why did we pay the principal that just runs the school with so few students, so much money? It's $150,000. We pay our first selectman 40,000 for the year. Why is that budget so big for the principal? And what does he do, or she do? I've never met him, so I'm just asking because I don't know. I see that's a big expense, $150,000 per year.
Do you want me to answer it? Okay.
yes, you're the,
Yes,
the expert.
there are numerous state statutes that have to be followed. And this, whoever is principal, man, woman, whoever it is, they need to know this, they need to look with it. There are certain state laws about curriculum, things that have to be taught. It is a very comprehensive, complicated job. And I will say this publicly, we are very, very fortunate for the person that we have as our principal now. Again, her focus is on the kids, on, abiding by the law, figuring out ways to reduce what we spend. But it is a very complicated, position that she not only has to answer, she has to answer to the state, but then she has to answer to seven boards of education as well. So it's a lot of work for her. It's a lot of work for the principal. And I would also indicate that there are no unions. There are no unions for principal.
Mrs. McCara,
Yes, ma'am, sir.
for clarity's sake, may I ask you whether the principal, generally speaking, is paid market rate?
Yes. Unless, in fact, our principal is paid less than market rate.
I didn't know, that's why I was asking.
That's okay. I'm happy to answer questions and happy to inform people so that people do understand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. For child.
Just in closing, I think we're pretty close to closing, Chairman Betty. Just want to thank the staff of the town hall for being here this evening, for answering any questions that may come up. I want to thank the chairmen that have shown up from the Rec Commission, P and Z, and so forth. The Fire Commission, that they had showed up here this evening to answer any questions. Our DPW manager is back from the fire call. As we say, most everyone in this town wears at least two hats. Some of us wear even more. But I want to thank the Board of Finance for the public hearing. Again, I think some points well taken is that we should have our public hearing before we start our work on a lot of our budgets. We have our work sections, so on and so forth. It might be good to get the public's input ahead of time before we really start rolling up our sleeves and using all our pencils and the erasers. And I'm going to ask one thing, Chairman Betty, here at the end. When we all get up, I set up the room tonight. I'm asking for everyone, just as they would at the Lee H. Kellogg Square, pick up their chair.
They do have, except their chairs.
All right, and it'll be a great night.
And I hope you will consider what Andrea said about how we do this in terms of
We've heard, I
yeah,
definitely, I would say we've all heard.
great idea, and I don't think you're restricted by law. I think you can do it any way you want.
Mentioned that by statute, the Board of Finance has settled on a direct, there must be a hearing. So if you're going to have a hearing before they do it,
We will have
going
to
to call it a hearing or a meeting, you're still going to have your it's required before the final submittal, the draft. They're all real short.
I just need a motion to adjourn.
So
With that, if David's gonna put it up, okay, thank you.
Yeah.